Imagine a world in which people are everywhere and animals are rare. Most of us already live in that world. Roughly 50,000 cities containing 4 billion people sprawl across land that was once habitat for millions of animals. 41 million miles of roads slice through even more land, fragmenting ecosystems and constricting movement of many more animals. Meanwhile, industrial agriculture has spread across 40% of the planet's land area, replacing habitat that once nurtured everything from tigers to turtles. We share this planet with an estimated 9 million other species, but we tend not to notice how quickly most of their populations have declined. Humans are now the dominant species, and the fate of non-human beings seems to matter less and less as more and more people treat nature as a vacation destination, or as a place they drive through or fly above on their way to comfort-controlled zones of human occupation and commerce. We are only now finding out how costly our strategic withdrawal from the natural world has been for both wildlife and for the human spirit. The human spirit derives much of its symbolic freedom from scenic vistas and powerful animals. Like it or not, our emotional intelligence is deeply embedded in a landscape of non-human nature and wildlife, regardless of how much time we spend immersed in a humanly constructed world. Open range and majestic creatures still inspire our frontier imagination and sense of group identity, but few of us seem prepared to limit future development in order to preserve these dwindling vistas and wildlife populations. The alluring myth of the Anthropocene is that human ingenuity will replace the bounty of non-human nature with man-made, market-driven forms of abundance. While photosynthesis, the hydrological cycle, and many other ecological services make living possible, what increasingly directs our daily lives are capital flows and computer algorithms. The algorithms, together with artificial intelligence and machine learning, promise greater foresight and control in managing human affairs, while capital flows provide people with concentrated wealth and rapid development, usually at the expense of other living things. Encounters with the natural world, with wildness, help make life interesting and in rare moments wondrous. But wildness introduces too much volatility and uncertainty in a world designed for human supremacy. Only one species out of 9 million really counts, with the possible exception of our pets. But don't confuse pets with wildlife. The wildlife crisis is fundamentally about a systems failure, not a failure to relate to individual birds and animals. People have never before enjoyed as many pets as they do today. Nearly 3/5 of the global population has pets, with dogs accounting for 1/3 of the total. Add to this the domestic animals of agriculture, which principally serve human consumers of meat, and you begin to grasp the scale of biotic change triggered by the Anthropocene. Nearly everything alive that is bigger than a microbe is becoming an artifact of human development and design. For example, if you focus on mammals and look at their biomass ratios, the ratio of domestic to wild creatures is more than 20-1. The roughly 8 billion humans represent 1/3 of all mammals on Earth, but account for only 1/100% of all living biomass. Livestock account for about 60% of all mammals, while wild mammals like bears, tigers, whales, and lions altogether make up less than 4% of the total. The latest scientific estimates are that humans have destroyed 83% of wild mammals and half of the Earth's plants, much of it in the past 70 years. Although alarm bells have sounded for decades about endangered species and the so-called biodiversity crisis, the role of the Anthropocene didn't attract serious attention until 2014, when it was revealed that nearly half of all animal populations on Earth had been lost in a period of 4 decades due to human development, population growth, and accelerating rates of per capita consumption.
The World Wildlife Fund put out an alarming report this week. It says that the world's animal population has been cut in half in the past 40 years.
WWF says populations of mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians and fish have declined on average by 52%.
Tigers have gone down from about 100,000 at the turn of the last century to only 3,200 tigers left on the planet at the moment.
Half of the world's marine animals have died out in a little more than a generation. Since 1970, marine animal populations have declined by almost 50%. Some commercial fish families, including tuna and mackerel, have lost 75% of their stock.
Creatures across land, oceans and rivers have been decimated as humans kill them for food in unsustainable numbers while polluting or destroying their habitats.
We humans like to define ourselves by what we build, invent, or create. But our signature trait is manifest most clearly by what we destroy. Is it possible we are eroding non-human life in ways that will destroy our own prospects for happiness and sustainable prosperity? Even worse, are we losing our moral integrity as humane beings in a mad race to extinction? Today we are architects of the most advanced civilization yet achieved. And at the same time, we are the leading executioners of non-human life, presiding over the first mass extinction since the death of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. Only one species, ours, seems poised to dominate everything. Every ecosystem, every watershed, every cultivated food source, every climate zone, every geographic region, every type of habitat, every market, zip code, biological community, and living animal. From the Arctic polar bear to the Antarctic penguin, and the millions of species in between. As we have seen, it is not just species that are at stake. The plight of sentient beings of all forms is a growing concern, whether or not their species is currently endangered.
Mass extinctions of animals are a moral tragedy because they involve suffering and death of individuals within the species. Species themselves don't suffer. It's individual animals who experience pain, terror, and grief as they and their fellows are destroyed. Throughout history, humans have inflicted unimaginable suffering and death on animals, with a sense that we had a right to do so because of our complex intelligence or some God-given special dignity. But why should one type of intelligence among many, the kind that benefits our physically fragile species, be the measure of all moral worth? Why should having one kind of interesting capacity among the amazing range of animal abilities give us the right to harm other beings? What matters morally is sentience, the ability to feel pleasure and pain, because a sentient being can easily be harmed in ways that truly matter to that being. For centuries, humans have thought that our special mental capacities, reason, language, free will, moral agency, made us more valuable than other creatures, and that being superior to other beings gave us the right to dominate and use them in whatever way we chose. Well, every aspect of that traditional view has now been questioned. Why should a mental capacity that is of special value to one species, ours, be the universal criterion of moral value? Why should only those beings like us have moral importance? Our focus on abilities that only we supposedly have is laughably biased. Why not focus on the cheetah's speed, or the bat's sonar, or the wolf's sense of smell as the criterion of moral standing? And even if human capacities somehow made us better than other beings, why should that give us a right to exploit them? Why should it not instead give us a special responsibility to avoid harming them and to remedy the grievous damage we've done to them, both as individuals and as species?
Saving animals requires saving some of Earth's most beautiful and remote habitats. We are fortunate that so many stunning natural vistas remain, even in places where people have lived for centuries. But will most of these habitats survive the economic and population pressures of another century of global trade, migration, and debt-financed growth? The beauty of wild lands and seas is not just a matter of aesthetics. It is a major source of humanity's inspiration, enchantment, and creativity. One man developed a unique relationship with this world by hiking step by step more than 26,000 miles through wilderness areas of North America, Asia, and Africa. His name was Narayan, and he died tragically during the making of this series. An eco-poet and naturalist, Narayan devoted most of his life to exploring mountain wilderness and observing wildlife. For him, the decline of animals and habitat represent an enormous threat to development of the human imagination and to our individual capacities for wonder.
Wonder, it occurs to me, as a wonderful word. We underuse it, I think. If we're investigating the real world, as, for example, all of the sciences claim to do, it seems that the motive properly needs to be to encounter that sense of wonder. The sense of wonder, of course, is in me. The wonderful is the outer world that I'm encountering. We used to have an even more meaningful word, awe, A-W-E. The sense of awe has mostly disappeared from our public discourse. As an individual, rediscover it, because that's the very ground of your voyage. If you undertake the voyage of your life without a sense of awe, at many encounters along the way, then you sink into the sense of boredom, which is in fact so characteristic of our society. If we don't contact anything real, and it's all up on a screen, and you live safely within four walls and a nice solid roof, you're unlikely to encounter this sense of awe. Awe is not a thing, it's a response. Clamorous colors. Banal, perhaps, once put into words, the great wonder, rhapsodized, the marvels, itemized. Henna-tinged foliage just leafing out from last season's jade green. Mirror Lake glancing sparks through somber forest shade. The palettes' rare mix, slanting shift of shadow, sunbeam glow within essential hues, deft, swift stroke, brushed to contrast and even conflict these most lustrous, clamorous colors.
In the presence of staggering natural beauty, the mulish cynicism of modern life temporarily gives way to fragments of joy, which remind us, however momentarily, that our youthful priorities in life are being sadly altered by money, power, and the false imperatives of material growth. The simple pleasures of nature have no rivals on Wall Street or in the vast entertainment centers created for our amusement. We've designed a society fit for billionaires, but not one that is conducive to sustaining life itself. For that to happen, we will have to rediscover our connection to other life forms and eventually our connection to the universe. Instead of living closer to nature, most of us have settled for the cold, hard comfort of steel, glass, and plastic, while spurning the living community of which we are integral, interdependent parts. We've no doubt benefited financially from our divorce from nature. The dubious rewards can be seen in the vast economic growth that has been so unevenly distributed among our global population. Yes, our cities, houses, and dreams are bigger than ever before. But the strength of our communities and the spirit of our people have continued to decline, in no small measure because of the biological wealth we have squandered. We've made a world that can't function without the internet. Yet we expect to function just fine without the web of life. Mass extinction is somehow more acceptable than curbing human population growth and per capita consumption rates. Perhaps it's time to reconsider what gives rise to happiness and sustainability. Surely part of the answer is ecological health and a sense of belonging to a community of life that is greater than ourselves, and for that matter, greater than our species. When we lose our connection to the web of life, we lose something precious in our capacity for empathy, not to mention our understanding of human identity. We lose vital sources of inspiration and spirituality that power much of the human imagination. Young children seem to understand intuitively that observing animals or playing with their toy-like representations is part of human identity formation. They may also sense that making contact with the non-human is part of what makes life meaningful, mysterious, and graced by moments of enchantment. Our success as a species is predicated on a spiritual connection to the natural world that is far more important than our techno connection to the digital world of smartphones and computer screens. When we build relationships with both human and non-human beings, success becomes less a personal achievement and more a celebration of interdependence. We need to encounter the non-human other, life forms that are not the products of human thought, ecosystems that are not the products of human design, and natural beauty that transcends the eye of the human beholder. What but hubris can make us think that humans will evolve successfully in the absence of non-human nature? Such a world would suffer from a lack of empathy, and that's a big problem. Empathy is vital for building cooperation and community, both of which are needed for our long-term survival. Empathy is an emotional bridge that carries people across the gulf between independence and interdependence. We celebrate our personal independence, but it is our interdependence that makes us truly human and capable of empathy. The kind of interdependence to which we aspire can be symbolized by a roped climbing team ascending a steep mountain. Our fate is ultimately tied to the fate of others. We either secure the web of life or perish in its unraveling. Declaring our interdependence means expanding our capacity for empathy with animals. The feelings we derive from close encounters with them can be amazing. but they can also reveal disturbing things about the human treatment of animals and their habitat. When an innocent animal is chained, plucked from the wild, caged, and otherwise abused or denied food, ugly questions arise about our morality and sense of decency. Those who cherish animals have visceral reactions to the mistreatment of other creatures. For these people, empathy can be a curse, especially when it produces anguish over the senseless loss of so many animals as a result of development, human diets, pollution, or hunting for sport and profit. But there is a deeper sense of loss that comes with this destruction, the loss of ecological wholeness. It is like burning down a library in which each of the books is uniquely valuable and yet impossible to comprehend without reading all of the others. We may be the most literate civilization in history, but it appears we are becoming illiterate in life. If the ultimate objective of nature's design is ecological wholeness, humans will need to assist in that design. By acting as if we are separate from and above nature, we are jeopardizing our own life support system. That is why empathy has such a crucial role to play. Empathy is ultimately about learning how to feel connected to the natural world and to each other. Animals are both facilitators and subjects of that learning. As pets, they provide children with early opportunities to practice empathy, often in a spirit of unconditional love. As wild animals, they introduce a rare and sometimes risky opportunity for interspecies communication and life-affirming connections that can only be forged in the absence of human control. Wildness opens up a world that is not based on human thought or domination, one that invites us to connect with the great mysteries of life. By encountering beings that have not been reared or trained by us, and that do not serve our aims, we have a chance to discover our true identity and place in the web of life. Conversely, a world without wild animals is a world with a diminished capacity for empathy and ecological wholeness. Can we afford to lose the living natural wonders our ancestors discovered in forests, mountains, oceans, jungles, wetlands, and deserts? And what about the less charismatic creatures? Can we afford to lose the estimated 41% of insect species that have declined in just the past decade? Many of them vital pollinators, like bees, or decomposers, like the dung beetles. I used to think that people are prisoners of their past, unable to recognize their endless possibilities for change. But now I wonder if we are becoming prisoners of our future, our dreams deflated and confined by the global disruption we are causing. Humans seem to have an unbending will to change the environment instead of ourselves. Ironically, we are changing nature in ways that will surely change us by limiting our choices and our potential to become fully human. Clearly, humanity dominates this planet at its own peril. We stand mute in the face of global imponderables, whether they be specters of mushroom clouds or children growing up in a world without wildlife and diverse plants. I am saddened that my grandchildren will not know the wildlife and wilderness that I have known, or many of the species and ecosystems that have rapidly disappeared in my lifetime. I grieve that they may never see the healthy coral reefs and alpine meadows that inspired me over many decades of travel and exploration. I realize that previous generations might have had similar thoughts about my generation, an example of what naturalists call shifting baselines. Still, I believe we are approaching a point of no return that my grandparents could not have grasped. We are now experiencing a period of extinction that is unprecedented in human history, a threat that is fundamentally greater in both rate and magnitude than anything humanity has caused or experienced in the past.
Domesticated humans, behave more like sheep, drop complacent heads down, nibble en masse right to roots their own pasturage, leave all brown, yet expect somehow to gorge on more green goods? Humans grow quite a big brain, though who knows why. Its capacity waits unexplored, its usual contents boxed up and tightly taped shut for ready-made consumption. It doesn't much listen, look, register lurking threats, interpret large looming signs, sniff the sickly stench of fellow creatures shoved toward death by our misuse of shared space on the matronly lap of this overburdened, increasingly tattered, scarred, yet still allure bespangled, sequin-robed goddess globe.